All right, we are going to continue here into chapter 9, working with square roots or radicals. And what we're going to do today is we're going to work on multiplying radicals. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, simply put, what we're simply going to do is when we multiply two radical expressions together, what we simply do is we multiply coefficient to coefficient, radicand to radicand, and then we simplify the radicals. An easy way to put that is we multiply outside to outside, then we multiply inside to inside, and then we simplify. Okay, so if you kind of think of that way, if there's a number in front of the radical, you multiply that to the other radical that has a number in front of it, and then you multiply the two numbers that are on the inside of the radical, we multiply those as well. Okay, and then we simplify as possible. Now, this will be including things like just multiplying radicals, but it might also include distributing by a radical or FOIL with a radical, which is distribution as well. Okay, so let's try it. So here we go. So we started, I have the square root of 10 times the square root of 30. So the first thing I do is I notice there's a 1 here, a 1 here. So 1 times 1 is 1. So now I multiply the things inside. So I have 10 times 30, that's 300. Now we simplify. So I look at 300 and I say, okay, this is a square root of 100 times 3. The square root of 100 is 10, so it comes out to the front, and we have 10 square root of 3. And that is how we would multiply that one. On this second one, we would take, and we don't have anything out front other than a 1, so we would just take our radicands, 3 times 12, and that's going to get me square root of 36. Now, the nice thing here is the square root of 36 is a perfect square, so we take the square root of 36, which is 6. And that's how we do that process. On this next one now we have some coefficients. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 2 and I'm going to multiply it to the 7. So 2 times 7, that's going to get me 14. Then I'm going to take and multiply the 5 times the 15, which is 75. Now I go to simplify. So I look, are there any perfect square factors of 75? And there are. It's 25 times 3. The square root of 25 is 5, so we're going to bring that out. And we go 14 times 5, that is 70, square root of 3. Okay, let's try this last one. Now, if you notice here, I have this grouping. I have 7 square root of 8 squared. Now, remember what that square means is that you have 7 square root of 8 times itself, 7 square root of 8. So all we simply do now is multiply outside to outside. So 7 times 7 is 49. And then I come in here and I go 8 times 8, and that's 64. And then at this point, we take the square root of 64, which is 8, and we're going to bring that out, and we take that 49 times 8, and we get 392. Okay, so outside to outside, inside to inside, or coefficient times coefficient, radicand times radicand, and then simplify. Okay, let's try a couple of the other methods that we can use this in. So here, if you notice, we are distributing. Well, we're going to do the process the same, we just have to do it repeatedly. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute here to the first one. So I have 2 times 3, that gives me 6. And then I have square root of 3 times square root of 6. They're both on the inside, so that would get me square root of 18. Then I come through and I multiply to the next one. So I have 2 times the negative 5. That's going to get me negative 10. And then I have the 3 times the 2, since they're both on the inside, and that's square root of 6. My last thing I do now is I look and say, can I simplify anything? And I can. 18 has a perfect square factor of 9 in it. 6 does not, so it's going to stay. The square root of 9 is 3, so that ends up giving me 3 times 6, which is 18 square root of 2 minus 10 square root of 6. And that would be my final answer, since I can't combine those at all, since they're not like radicals. Okay, let's try this next one here. So on this one, I'm going to take and I'm going to distribute. Now, if you notice, the 7 is just on the outside. There is no radical to it. So I'm just going to go 7 times 3, that's 21. The square root of 5 times a 1 there really is just square root of 5. Okay, now I come back and I distribute again. So I take the 3 times the negative 2, that's going to get me negative 6. Then I take the 5 times the 10, since those are both on the inside, and that's square root of 50. Then I try to break it down. So I have 21 square root of 5, can't be simplified any further, minus 6, and remember 50 has a 25 times a 2, so that's going to bring a 5 out. The square root of 25 is 5, so we would end up with 21 square root of 5 minus 30 square root of 2. And that would be our final answer. Okay, now let's go to this problem. If you notice, I have a binomial times a binomial, which means we are going to FOIL. So remember, when we FOIL, we go first times first. Both of those are on the outside, so that's going to give me a negative 8. Then I'm going to go outside times outside. So 4 is on the outside of the radical, 5 is on the inside, so I just put them together, 4 square root of 5. Then I have the inside multiplying, so I go negative 2 times negative 2, that's going to get me a positive 4. Square root of 5 times nothing there, so it's going to just give me square root of 5. Then I multiply the last here, so that would give me negative 2 square root of 25, because 5 times 5 are both on the inside. The next thing I do is I look to simplify. So I look over here, square root of 25 turns into a 5, so that would multiply, and that would get me minus 10. Now what I can do is I can take this negative 8 and this negative 10, and I can put them together because they are alike. So negative 8 minus 10 gives me a negative 18. Then I can take and put the positive 4 square root of 5 and the positive 4 square root of 5. I can put those together because they have like radicals, and that would get me a positive 8 square root of 5. And that would be my simplified answer there. Okay, let's try it again with another one. So we're going to start off. We do our first times our first. Notice the 3's inside and the 3's inside, so the negative 4 is going to stay out. Square root of 9. Then I multiply the outside, so 3 and 2 are both inside there, so that's going to stay square root of 6. Then I do this one, and that negative 4 is going to stay on the outside. 2 times the 3 are both inside, so that's going to give me a 6 there. Then I multiply those, and that's going to give me the square root of 4. My next thing I do is I start looking at what can be simplified. So this 4 is going to turn into a 2. This 9, square root of 9 is a 3, so that's going to get me a negative 12. So now we take and we say, okay, I can take this negative 12 and this positive 2 and add those together, and that would get me a negative 10. Then I can take a positive square root of 6 and a negative 4 square root of 6, and I'm going to add those together, and that's going to give me a negative 3 square root of 6, and that would be our simplified answer.